We are recording. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to just barrel through these slides. These are from earlier. Okay, welcome to the 16th MACCDC debrief and award ceremony. So I believe we have, I think I saw him come in, Dwayne Williams is on, and I want to welcome Dwayne Williams from the National Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition. This is, I don't know if this is still the case, but at one point, this was cases, and you can see boxes full of Ethernet cables and whatnot in the back, and this would move gear from place to place. So that's always a great shot there. Teams, I want to start off just doing some thanks, and we can hold the proverbial applause till the end, but I'd be remiss without thanking folks. First off, I just want to thank the schools that participated, the coaches, the remote site judges, the players, including the alternates that helped the teams prep. We had Cap Tech University. They've competed a number of years. George Mason University also competed for a number of years. Liberty University, also a longtime participant. Millersville University, longtime participant. They've been competing since the first one in 2006, and in fact, they were second place in the national CCDC in 2006 and 2007. So Robin and Michael, can I have you guys be like participant audio police for me? Thank you. Sure. Appreciate it. Northern Virginia Community College, it's the first year they've qualified for the regional finals. Old Dominion University, first year they participated in the Mid-Atlantic CCDC ever. And University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So big shout out to the coaches, captains, mentors, players, remote site judges, everybody involved in getting the teams to this point. I also forgot the University of Pittsburgh. Sorry, University of Pittsburgh. Ahmed, the coach for University of Pittsburgh, is the one who brought the Mid-Atlantic CCDC to the University of Virginia, which has become a powerhouse. They were three-time in a row national champions. So thanks and welcome to those folks. Sponsors, Raytheon Intelligence and Space, they are our named sponsor. We got some folks on. They're going to be announcing the winners at the end here. So good to have them on, and thanks for their support. Palo Alto Networks, they've been a long time sponsor. We've had Palo Alto's both bare metal devices on-prem when we run this face-to-face at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and of course a virtual appliance in scope this year. Sealing Technologies, first-time sponsor. CrowdStrike, first-time sponsor. Bogdan Computer Services, Mike Doherty, who's been on the ops team for 15 years, representing Bogdan. Cobalt Strike, Raphael Mudge, some of you may know, developed this tool partly to help support the Mid-Atlantic CCDC and of course the National CCDC and the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. So thanks to our sponsors, thanks to all of our volunteers. There's a lot, and they put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, starting with our ops team, Rob Logan, Mike Doherty, Dr. David Gregg and Agata. They support the Injects scoring engine out of Moraine Valley Community College in Illinois. Our incident response team this year, Scott, Hazel, Lauren, Daniel, they're back from last year, and Scott's been with us for about 15 years. Marina and Roman, thanks to both of you for pinch hitting today. On the red team, of course, Michael and the various others that shall remain nameless. Our Inject team was led by Becky. Becky was a participant in the 2008 CCDC. She was on the team from the Community College of Baltimore County that won the Mid-Atlantic CCDC and was the first community college. Well, that year there were two community colleges that qualified for the National CCDC, and Mike and Nick and Kurt did some pinch hitting. Thank you very much to our Inject team. C-level executives, Costas, Jay, Jeff, the dynamic trio there, CEO, CFO, CIO. I think Jay and Jeff got laid off because of a leaked memo that essentially, I don't know if it's going to put the big time health organization out of business, but more from, you'll hear from Costas in a little bit here. He's got some prepared remarks to share with you. So thanks to those three. That's the second year in a row now we've had the three of them. Costas has been our CEO for years and is always does a fabulous job. Some statistics. So I started my career as a statistician. I guess you would call it a data scientist now, and just some random stats. So in terms of the infrastructure, you can see the lines of custom Terraform and Ansible code and various sorts of scripts to automate, config implementations on Cisco ASAs and Palo Alto firewalls. You can see the number of active EC2 instances and the quantities of snapshots and running volumes and DNS queries and NetFlow squid access logs. 5 billion packets were sent at the competition infrastructure, 735 gigabytes of traffic generated, and for roughly the cost about $3,500. I think Rob said that the qualifiers was about 1,500-ish. So you're looking at about $5,000 to support 25 teams for about 6 hours on a one-day qualifier, and then roughly $3,500 to support 8 teams. And of course, then the infrastructure, all the red team, et cetera, et cetera. Trouble tickets. So for those that weren't actively involved in the competition, we used Discord for the main communications platform. I personally thought it was great. Slack was a nightmare in my opinion. Over-engineered, really hard user interface. Discord was, in my opinion, way better. And one of the things that made it way better, in my opinion, was the trouble ticket system that Logan and Rob built. And we had 169 trouble tickets. Day one, most of those were Palo Alto related. And day two, most of them were teams not changing default passwords and asking the ops team to reset them. Services, you can see these are just raw scores here. So we ran 117 score bot rounds yesterday, 170 today. So 287 total score bot rounds were run over the 2 days. We had a total of 44 injects with a 60% completion rate, which is down a little bit from last year. Last year was about 64, 65%. So not bad. All right, so here's where we're going to get, so virtual round of applause. Yay, stats, sponsors, teams, volunteers, anybody I forgot. Thank you very much. So some feedback now. I know everybody is really cooked right now, but seriously, great job. No real issues that we had to deal with. People were respectful on Discord. The meme foo was strong. We had some great submissions for one of the injects that I'm going to share the caption this. For coaches, captains, I will be sending scoring reports early this coming week. I've decided to put those in sort of a graphic format, and I've got the template sort of filled in. All I need to do is just plug in numbers. I will also be sending team coaches and captains a link to the recording of today's C-level executive meeting. So I'm not going to make those publicly available, but I will share those with each team will get their own link. So look for that. There were a lot of quotable quotes, but I think this one sums it up. Would it be possible to reboot the entire environment that came from a team? That was at the end of today. The answer was yes, by the way. So we did reboot the entire environment. So now what I'm going to do is just turn it over to each of the leads from our various teams to sort of share some of their observations. So Rob, I'm going to turn over to you first.
Sure. So you've already gone through all of my stats that I had prepped for this. So yeah, there was a lot of work that went into this. I hope that you all had fun. Sorry for some of the delays that went out, but we tried. We shot for the moon and hit, or shot for the stars and hit the moon, and so the the um the entire environment was for the most part pushed via Terraform. That was a first for us. We did a lot of building out and deployment and automating this. One, so that we can do it again and again and again for the following years, but also to kind of share with the community so that others can and build out similar environments to practice with, or to put on their own like internal CCDC style events. And so we want to make sure we're giving back to the community as much as we can for all the things that we built. And one of the things is to make this more automatable and less headache to us eventually. Another big shout out that I want to give is Rusty. He did an amazing fix on the scoreboard earlier today, or on yesterday. My days are starting to go together, and it became way more responsive. Was working out for everyone, and we had just so everyone understands how many people were refreshing that scoreboard. We spent I think it sent something like to the order of 6.5 gigabytes of traffic to everyone who is doing the refreshing and stuff like that. So that's why it slows down. And if we'll share out the scoring engine GitHub if you want to provide feedback or have any suggestions or things you'd like to see featured. But also, just want to say thank you to everyone who participated, who used the ticketing system as it was intended. I think that worked out really well, like Casey was saying. Thank you for everyone who like just took that and went with it. Thanks for switching over to Discord very easily. No, there was no fuss, no muss. Everyone just popped on over. I appreciate that. But yeah, that's it. There's like, it was amazing the massive amounts of traffic you all generate every CCDC. It's just insane to me, and hope to see you guys and y'all next year. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Rob. Woo! Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Terregas, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Casey. Well, first of all, the big news. Thanks to all your efforts, I still have my job. Jay and Jeff have their jobs, and all the captains have their jobs. I met with my board. I convinced them that you guys rock, and you guys have created systems that will continue to preserve the sanctity and honor of our big-time health organization. So a big thanks to all of you that made it possible. So we're good. I grabbed a few thoughts from the C-suite that might help you next time you come up to meet me, the CEO, in whatever environment it is. First of all, many of you were very eager to tell me what you knew, but you weren't looking to me to find out what I needed. It's always useful to come to the shoes of the other person and try to understand what his or her needs are at the moment. I was worried, I was paranoid, I was freaking out, and I didn't want to hear about how many people you threw out or what kind of injects you answered. I wanted to know what's going to happen to my business. Now, several of you were able to satisfy that urge for calm and useful and technical and practical advice to the CEO. Others were not. So think about me rather than you when you come in front of me next time. Secondly, I made a lot of you, as did my co-hosts, do a lot of work, and we were supposed to go over that work this morning. Every single team understood the imperative of the New York Times kind of issue, and no one said, but what about my report? Well done. You have to move with the times and you have to be responsive. Thirdly, the thing I desperately wanted was future expectations, options to get something done rather than trust me. I wanted to hear options. And again, that's what differentiated the great teams that were in front of us to the teams that didn't do so well. And then finally, the soft skills, how to mollify a CEO or how to explain a technical thing in non-technical terms. Those are important. And I would urge for you to think about how to beef up those skills, because you don't want to be in the bowels of an organization with a screwdriver all the time. You want to rise to the top. You want to become a big CISO, a big CIO. In order to do that, you got to have those soft skills. Casey, can I have a few more minutes for the
Please, absolutely, yes.
Great. So personal hints for individuals that came in front of me. So myself and Jeff and Jay, so 8 of you, only 8. There are huge teams out there and doing the very best you could do, but we could only see 8 people. So for those 8 people, the comments are, first of all, be on time. We only gave them 10 minutes, and a couple of you showed up 3 minutes late. Well, 3 minutes late is 70% of the time. So you're already getting demerits for not showing up. There may be reasons for it, but you know, in business, I don't want to hear your reason. I'm just moving forward. So be on time. Looking at the camera was surprisingly difficult for some of you. You were looking at different monitors, and we spent some time in the C-suite talking about how unnerving it is not to be able to see your eyes and to understand that you're talking to us rather than some screen in your office. It always helps. And then talk the C-suite talk, beef up your word choices. A couple of you use terms like, you guys will understand. Well, I'm not a you guys, I'm a CEO. So you got to say, sir, or you got to say, we'll try something. So you got to play act that level of C-suite talk. And then finally, the human thing is communicate hope. I'm desperate. I don't know anything about cybersecurity as a CEO, but I'm worried about my job. So you got a really tough job to convince me that everything will be okay. So that's it. The brief summary, the optimal presentation would have hit those 3 points. What happened? Are we okay now? And will we be okay in the future? Some of you understood that imperative more than others. And so as I started my presentation with the quality of the teams that we saw, each and every one of you did a great job. So thank you very much on behalf of the big time health organization. Do well, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you, sir. Round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. I'll take the Injects. I was working with that team quite a bit, and a couple things stood out. Team 4 and Team 6 were just consistently good all weekend. What that meant was really nice report template. I think it was Team 4 that used the Mid-Atlantic CCDC logo. One person on the Inject team remarked at how consistently well the Team 4 Injects were written, and this person said, whoever wrote those, I would hire them to write policies, et cetera, et cetera. And in real life, sometimes you're asked to do something that you can't or shouldn't. It's okay to communicate that it can't get or be done. The people you're communicating that with may not like it. The example I'm thinking of, there was a fairly detailed Inject where you were asked to set up Security Onion, and it was a pretty heavy lift. It required quite a bit of storage capacity and various server-side applications and clients to get installed. And a couple teams, essentially said, look, we can't get it installed for these reasons, but if we could, this is what we would do. And that's sort of the things we're looking for in this event: thinking on your feet, being able to sort of take ambiguous or sometimes competing information and sort of make sense of it if you can, and then decide what to do. There was the very last Inject of the competition. There were 45 in total, was a Caption this, and we provided this image here. For those that don't know, that's Tim Rosenberg in the red polo there. Tim ran the Mid-Atlantic CCDC, the infrastructure, really in the event for maybe 13 years or so. And this was from, I think it was Team 6 UMBC, and it says, and here you can see nothing, all of the domain accounts I can log into. So that was UMBC Team 6. They won the Caption this contest. And a shout out to our old buddy Tim. Incident response, over to you, Scott.
Alrighty. First off, I got to say, thanks to Casey, Rob, and everybody else. It was actually, in my opinion, it ran even more smoothly this year than it has in years in the past. I mean, Palo Alto having problems is kind of a theme, but generally speaking, the Discord thing, I think the entire IR team really felt that was a positive move. It was much easier for us to use that this year. Hopefully my voice holds out here. And I also have to just say thanks to the entire IR team, because they processed like 98% of all the reports that were turned in. And I think Daniel and Lauren probably even took 80% of those. They were machines. And thanks to Marita and Roman for coming in today, because obviously the second day is always busier. So that's where I'm going to segue into some of the notes and the feedback that we as a team wanted to give back to the blue teams. The very first one we'll call time management. It's traditional almost that most teams wait until the second day to start focusing on their incident response reports, or their incident reports. Sometimes that's because red team sits around and does nothing on the first day that would be impactful or intrusive. But in reality, something's happening. And most teams wait to the second day because incident reports aren't considered line of sight critical actions when you're comparing that to an active attack by red team. I'm just trying to stay on your boxes and keep things operational. But in reality, if you're out, once you're out in the real world and hired and you're on a security team somewhere, organizations place a very high value on your incident reports and your investigations. And if you wait too long to document what you're doing in a report, you're going to miss critical details that will slip out of your view, because it's a pretty hectic 6, 10, 24 hours when you're in the middle of a real incident. And it's easy to try many things or do many things, and then suddenly 6 hours goes by and you can't really remember exactly what you did every time. So taking the time to document what you're doing as you're going through and really getting it down correctly is a hugely important thing. So I would encourage anyone who comes back next year, try and focus on those reports a little earlier. Also, as the IR team, we give a lot more love for the first 5 reports that come in, because we have the luxury of time to be able to give you a lot of feedback. By the second day, when we've got a queue of 20 reports that have all been dumped on us in an hour, we don't really have time to get back to you and give feedback. We're just going to grade what you have. So I'm going to move on down then to report content. There's a number of things in here. I won't go through them all, but scroll here, sorry. Now I'm all self-conscious about not looking into the camera, because Costa said, look into the camera. So pardon me for the fact that I'm not going to be looking in the camera, because my notes are on another monitor. When you're submitting evidence, pics or it didn't happen. A lot of you submitted screenshots, but they were just screenshots sitting on a supplemental document. And there was no way to necessarily easily correlate those back to what you were saying in your reports. So, we could have seen log files or outputs from tools, but we really didn't know what those related to in your report. And sometimes you said reference image 1, but you didn't really say which one that was on the actual document that had the images. So consider that for your reports. Also, be a little more verbose when you're answering. 3 or 4 word sentences or responses might be okay in some cases, but generally it's not enough information, especially when you're talking to people who don't have any idea about your network. if you consider the IR team to be like outside law enforcement, we're going to be coming in there just to do an investigation, and we really don't know anything about your environment. So you have to be more clear when you're detailing out what happened. Making references to things that you know about doesn't mean that the investigators are going to know about those. So being more specific about what you did when you say, I didn't just, I found something via active monitoring. That's not true. I mean, it is, but it's not enough. Say it, I was using this tool and we saw this output. And, that is important because of this and relates to this thing over here. It's much better when you can take all that information and use it to tell the story of what happened with all your evidence. So, that segues into the next point about more details. The more details you can provide, the better. Some of the better reports that we read every year have much more detailed explanations about what happened as far as the attack, the impact, and even the remediation. Once we have that information, if that's all in the report and we don't have to come back and ask you, it makes it much easier for us to figure out what to do next. Same thing with, if you say it's a Windows machine or a Linux machine, be specific. What version of Windows are we talking about here? If you just say a Windows server, like, is that a Windows 95 server? Obviously not. But if we don't know, then we have to come back and waste time asking. Same for things like dates and times. And we say this kind of thing every year. Don't just say it happened at 1600 hours. Say it happened on April the 2nd at 1600 hours and what time zone. Time zone thing is hugely important because, you could be thinking Eastern time and everybody else is thinking UTC. And very importantly, if you're going to make a conclusion or a statement about something that happened, be able to support that with your evidence. Collect the right evidence to support. If you say that the attack came from this IP address, they logged in with root, and then they created a bunch of fake accounts, show that in the logs. The one report that I read for that was 300 fake accounts were generated. They could show me when the account was logged into, and then in a separate log screenshot, that account at that same timestamp or 2 seconds later, running another command that then ran a script that then generated all the fake accounts. That was perfect. Moving on, be careful with attribution. There wasn't a lot of attribution, but the one that really stuck out in one of the reports was the team's suspected someone by the name of Matt Graber of being on red team, because in the PowerShell script that they captured, there was a reference to Matt Graber's evasion technique or something along those lines. So I don't think he's on red team, Mike, but I just did a quick Google and found that, he's a security person out in the industry who tweeted and came up with a really awesome technique, apparently, for some evasion PowerShell stuff. But his technique was being referenced in the code of the script. He wasn't actually the person doing the thing that red team was doing at the time. So you could get in trouble very quickly if you start making attributions like that and you can't prove that that's what happened. So be very, very careful with that part. That can get not only you in trouble, but your company. Back up here. Where was it? So this year was different. We had to approve firewall blocks. If Blue Team wanted an IP address blocked, you had to submit a ticket to the incident response team and request that. In years past, you could just do it. You were running your own firewalls, right? We just came in after the fact and observed the chaos. But now, if you have to come to us and say, I want to block this IP address, it requires, yeah, that's true. If you had a firewall, right? If you come to us and say, we want to block this IP address, you need to have sufficient reason to support that request. There's almost no company out there that's just going to let somebody, even if they're the firewall admin, willy-nilly go in and just take, I'm going to block an IP address. You have no idea what's going on. You need to have a reason for why you're blocking it, and that reason needs to be sufficient. We saw this IP address connecting to our system via SSH, and we don't know who they are. And they were using the root account, which they weren't supposed to do. That's a pretty fair assumption that you could block that IP address. Or this IP address was scanning us. Okay, that happens a lot, but if you want to block it for that reason, okay. If you just say, I want to block it because I don't like it, that's never going to work. Or if you just say, that's what we need to do, that's not going to work either. And you're never going to get that through an organization with diligent change control. I think next year we're going to try and change it up a little bit if we do that again, and maybe have a different form for the firewall blocks so we can keep, so they don't get confused with the rest of the regular incident response. But also, when you're submitting examples of malware that you've captured, maybe take screenshots when you send it to the IR team instead of sending us the actual stuff you find. Most of the time, if it's in a text file, that's probably okay, but generally speaking, it's better if you can take a screenshot of what you're talking about and show us that way. That way there's no possibility of accidental malware infection happening other places. That's the bulk of it. Casey, I'll send you the notes for the rest of it. But overall, I think the entire IR team agreed that for all the reports that we read this year, they were better than previous years. I don't think anybody got points deducted for wasting taxpayer money, which was cool. So, and none of the reports that I can recall were just worthless for the sake of doing a report. There towards the end, obviously, we had a lot of reports come through. Some teams didn't submit any reports. One team in particular, another team only submitted one. Another team submitted 9. And you would think more reports would give you more points, but when you average out all 9 of those, and a few of them were low scoring, they actually scored lower than a team that only submitted 4 or 5 reports. But all 4 or 5 of theirs were really good. So quality versus quantity is important to remember also. But generally speaking, we were all impressed with how well the reports were done this year as in terms of last year and years past. So good job there.
Great. Scott, thanks very much. Thanks for your thoughtful remarks too and your service. And how about a round of applause, not only for the incident response, but the Inject team too. Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
No worries.
You got
Thanks,
it.
Casey.
Michael, you want to share your screen? Okay, let me stop sharing. Okay, bud.
All right. See if my technical difficulties work.
There you go.
All right. Don't have a lot of slides this year, but give me 1 second. I'll start the slides. All right. So first, before we get started, I want to thank definitely Casey and Rob. The environment this year was very vast. It was very new to us. This is the first time we saw an environment this large here in the Mid-Atlantic CCDC. And the red team pretty much came in like it was a black box test. Very little knowledge about this environment, no default passwords, no nothing. We ran into a lot of the same issues that the students ran into day one. I want to thank my captains for making sure things ran smoothly amongst the teams, sharing out the wealth across everyone. On Windows side, we had Shields, or ex-administrator, the hacker formerly known as Shields. We had Rusty and everyone over on Linux, where we had HM01, and on firewalls, we had Chris Stoner. A lot of those names you guys are probably familiar with, and underneath them, they had a bunch of guys as well. But let's just jump into some things, so I'll keep you guys all day. So day one, similar to you guys, we struggled a lot on day one due to some technical difficulties. So a lot of twiddling our thumbs, trying to get as many shells as we can, stay unnoticed, not really making a lot of noise for you guys because we want to make sure that we stay in the environment. One of the good things that Rob was able to provide in this environment, which you'll find a lot in the real world, is there's a lot of machines in that environment that are not scorable. So you guys would focus on your scoring machines, and we can basically sit around on your non-scored machines, using that for recon, additional pivot points, ability to stay within your environment as long as possible to continue our attacks without really going noticed because you guys are focused on your injects and your scoring. Just like in the real world environment, you got to take in consideration your whole network, your whole environment. Anytime you guys are looking at defending it, anytime there's a breach or a outbreak, it's really good to understand where it's coming from, where people are, and put controls in place to try to stop that. By day 2, after some technical difficulties were fixed, there was a lot happier red team, as we had a lot more activity going on. So by early morning, once competition started, we started having a lot of shells start coming back to us, a lot more activity going on. You guys probably saw a lot more things going down from us, a lot more shells popping up. We had a lot of interactions with you guys. One of the ones I thought was pretty cool, it took me a few moments to really realize what was going on here, was they basically took a screenshot of your server and basically just replaced it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. You found a website. And then I started looking at the source code. I was like, oh, dude, that's so rude.
That's hilarious.
I was like, yeah. So definitely a lot of shells going on everywhere. Just like Rob said in the past, there was times that you guys tried to battle us, and there's times that you guys were able just to leave it alone, come back and fix it when we're not paying attention to anymore. The more you interact with us, the more it basically gets us excited, and the more we keep poking back. When you guys disappear, that's when we kind of lose interest and we move on to the next one and allow you guys some time to repair. So there's several teams out there this year. I don't want to mention numbers or anything like that, because I don't know if you guys know how they tie back to schools or anything like that. So I don't want to put anyone out there. But there was a couple of teams that did a great job of firefighting. They noticed the problems. They were able to fix the problems. They were able to get their services back up, get us out of their devices, lock things up pretty tight. So to those teams that took that initial time, instead of reverting, or instead of like trying to challenge us back, kudos to you guys. Great work there. Let's see here. So some pros. New environment, a lot of settings, right? So you guys had, in the internal network alone, I think there's over 30 something machines. That doesn't include the cloud, your enclave, and everything else. I believe you guys are still about 8 to 10 students per team. So a lot of work for each team, also a lot of work for us. On day 1, you guys went right in pretty fast, locking down accounts. There were still definitely a lot of default credentials across teams. Some teams in general seemed like they never logged in, to the point where we even asked the white team if there's actually a real team there. So make sure you guys get in there. You do change your passwords if you haven't. I know the enclave was a little inaccessible day 1, so some of those passwords didn't get changed in time. But those who did figure out the passwords, great job, because that really makes it much harder for our Windows teams to get in once those default passwords are gone. Ability to work together remotely with the COVID virus and everything, and us all remote. Those teams, you guys have to be remote. So all year long, you guys been practicing remote. You guys been working together remote. In the current workforce, we're all remote pretty much. So that gives you a lot of experience of what to do in firefight when you're actually just at your house. You can't physically go on location to troubleshoot these problems. So kudos there. I already talked about fixing the problems. Cons, I don't really like to complain a lot. So for the cons, really just high level. For us, being on the red team, I like to maybe down the road have like a scope and call or something early on. Give us a little more time to get infrastructure set up, a little more insight. Maybe turn from a black box to a gray box. Give the guys a little bit more planning time. Let's see here, firewalls. Yeah, so I'm not gonna mention firewalls. But as far as questions, we plan to still do a full red team debrief. If you guys came last year to the events, we did a like hour to hour and a half long session after the wrap-up meeting, where you guys can basically ask us anything. We'll share with you what we can. We won't share the secret sauce, but it's more a leisurely open comms link. So I'll send that out to you guys. Many of you guys already signed up via the Google form I sent, and I'll repaste that over in the Slack channel for those who haven't gotten it. All right, that's all I have.
Thanks, Michael.
Yep.
Rob, you want to go, bud?
Yeah, sorry. I have a couple more things that I forgot to mention during my time. And actually, Gen X Web gave me one more. So for everyone on the team that's a student, you did hear that I gave him no information ahead of time, right? Like, I want that on the record, because like every single event, we get the question from at least 15 to 20% of you saying, how much does the red team know ahead of time? How much have you given them? How much do they know? And it's literally nothing. So I just wanted on the record that I did not pay him to make that comment. So the other thing is huge thanks to Logan. He was on the team for the ops team. It wasn't just me this year building it out with Michael. And like just the one additional person made a huge difference. He's actually the one that did most of the 9,000 lines of Terraform. So huge thanks to him. Another statistic that we didn't mention was there was phishing this year. The red team enjoyed the phishing, and there was 97 phishing emails sent to get into your network. And finally, the Enclave. I don't know, Casey, did you mention or want to mention the lost RNA at all?
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay.
Go
So the big crown jewels that you had, the big huge point loss, if you lost, was the RNA design for, and each team had a very custom RNA stream for it inside of their enclave. And I just wanted to let you know, and the CEO know, since he's still on, that every single team lost them. So I'm sorry, but that point change didn't really change much. So yeah, I will do my best to make that harder to get for the red team next year.
Yeah, we had two sets of crown jewels, right? We had the mRNA, essentially the blueprint for making, quote unquote, the one vaccine to rule them all. And that was a flag that teams could capture. I'm sorry, that was a flag that the red teams could capture, and they got all of the blue teams mRNA flags, if you will. And then we also had this memo. It was sort of a little silly because the memo was written by the general counsel, detailing essentially, right, that in addition to being a data science oriented company, that the Big Time Health Organization was doing R&D and had come upon a recipe for a vaccination that would be a game changer in the marketplace. But we're negotiating with primarily the United States, some of its top enemies, and so we're sort of two sets of crown jewels, if you will. And we made a big deal with the C-level executives about the leaked memo to the New York Times, but there also was these flags that the red team was going after. So it was sort of kind of a double hit, really. Good.
Yep.
Anything else, Rob?
That's all I had. Thank you much for the time.
Thank you. Are you seeing my slide that says final standings?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay. So I would like to introduce Kate Barron. Kate is with Raytheon Intelligence and Space, and she's brand new from the Raytheon Intelligence and Space crew on the Mid-Atlantic, on the CCDC. So Raytheon Intelligence and Space supports the nationals, and they support a handful of regionals. And Kate is brand new, as I mentioned. And Kate, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself. Kate is going to announce the third place, the second place, and the winning teams. So Kate, over to you.
Thank you, Casey. And I'd also like to thank the Mid-Atlantic CCDC team and volunteers for organizing such a valuable event for our competitors this year. What a great team format. And then to each and every one of the competitors here today, I'd like to congratulate you for making it to the regional event here too. So tonight I do have the pleasure to announce this year's winners. So without further ado, in third place is Liberty University.
Yay!
Congratulations. All right. And in second place, and advancing onto the wild card competition, is going to be George Mason University. Congratulations, team.
And Kate, 1 second. So for those that don't know, this is the second year in a row that the national folks are hosting a wild card round, which includes the second place winners from the all 9 regions. We happen to be the last region competing. The other 8 regions have declared their winner, and all of the 9 second place regional finishers will compete April 7th in this wild card route. Interestingly enough, our wild card, not winner, but our second place team last year was University of Virginia. They got invited to the wild card round last year. They won the wild card, and then the winner of the wild card round gets invited to the nationals, and then UVA ended up winning the nationals. So on over to you without further ado.
Casey, we can hold the first place team in suspense a little bit longer if you like.
So there is a bit of pressure on the winning team. So the past 4 in a row national CCDC champions have come from the Mid-Atlantic region. In 2017, it was University of Maryland, Baltimore County that won the nationals. 2018, 2019, 2020, University of Virginia, 3-peat national champs that tied a record set by, I think, the University of Central Florida won 3 in a row. So very, very, very strong region. And without further ado, let's announce the winner.
Right. Well, without further ado, and this year's Mid-Atlantic CCDC champions who will be advancing to NCCDC is, in fact, the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Congratulations, you all, and to all of the competitors here today. Back over to you, Casey.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks to everybody. That's the official show. We'll hang out here. Discord servers open. Thanks again to everybody. If I forgot to thank you, I apologize, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.